Our next question deals with health care, and Mr. Corker, we'd like you to respond first, and for that, Lavinia Butler.
As a United States Senator, what priority would you place on health care? Do you believe that access to quality, affordable health care and pharmaceuticals should be a right of all citizens? And what will be your immediate actions to address the health concerns of the uninsured and underinsured if you are elected?
I think it's a great question. I absolutely want to work on that issue. I love doing that as Commissioner of Finance. And I believe it's a moral responsibility for our country to do everything we can to make sure that people have affordable health care. Everything from making sure that small businesses can band together and create associated health plans so that they have the same buying power that others have. Making sure that individuals that are not covered by health care have the ability to deduct it just like companies can. Making sure that Americans do not pay more for prescription drugs than Canadians do. Making sure we continue to promote health savings accounts. Using technology to lower the cost of administration. We use it for lab tests, we use it for making diseases go away, but we don't use it. We don't use it on the administrative side. Those are the things that I think we need to do to make sure that health care is affordable. And in addition, this is something that my opponent and I differ greatly on. I think we need to have medical malpractice tort reform in our country. 91 non-urban counties in our state have 40% less OB/GYN services. Women throughout our state are driving miles to get OB/GYN services because of the fact that we do not have tort reform. My opponent opposes that. I'm on the side of women who'd like to have better health care.
Mr. Ford.
Since being in the United States Congress, I've been in the minority party for 10 years. Meaning my opponent's party has been in the majority. Since they've been in the majority, health care premiums have gone up, prescription drug costs have gone up, 8 million children without health insurance, and it went from 42 or 44 to 46 million in the number of uninsured in this nation. We've had enough of that. Here's what I would do. I think Medicare ought to be able to negotiate directly with the drug companies. Conservative groups estimate that will save over $820 billion over 10 years. In Washington, a lot of people say that's $1 trillion in 10 years. I think $180 billion is a lot, so I'm going to quote the right number. It's $820 billion. I'm the only one on stage who's actually supported a tort reform package. I'm a believer without a doubt. You have to prevent doctors from practicing defensive medicine. But we've got to go further. We have to ensure that women and children at a very young age have access to health care. It may cost a little bit on the front end, but on the back end, we will make it up if they learn to live a healthy life. My colleague Lincoln Davis is here from the 4th District in this great state. We're supporters of efforts to bring and introduce character education into our schools to help kids understand the value of living a healthy life physically and morally and spiritually, I might add. My opponent makes the point all the time about his role as finance commissioner for Dunn-Sundquist. I can assure you, Governor Bredesen wouldn't give him or Governor Sundquist much credit for what he had to deal with when he came in the office and the fixes he's had to put in place. It's time for a change.
Mr. Corker.
Well, my opponent has voted 5 times against tort reform, and I'll be glad to supply that to those who would like to say that. But when he talks about big oil, my finance chairman is a retailer. Has nothing whatsoever to do with setting the price of oil. Price fluctuates with him just like it does with you. And to have somebody who wants to deal with energy, who doesn't even understand the difference between a retailer and somebody who produces petroleum. By the way, he's the largest seller of ethanol in the state and biodiesel in the country. It will be very difficult, Congressman, with your lack of understanding to even be able to solve the energy problem.
Vicki?
Chris, our next question concerns immigration, and Mr. Ford, if you would respond first. Stephen Wilhelm is here to tell us.
Tennessee's illegal immigrant population has increased by 950% since 1990, straining our education, health, and welfare systems. Do you support greater border security, and do you believe local and state authorities should be allowed to enforce immigration laws?
Yes, sir. Excellent question. How old are you, young fella?
17.
Thank you for being here. You're a year away from voting, and this is a good education. Hopefully we'll keep it on issues tonight for you. 2 things. 1, our borders are broken. We've known that now since 9/11. The 9/11 Commission came forward and introduced 41 recommendations for this Republican-led Congress, and Republican-led Senate to implement. Now, please understand, when I say Republican-led Congress and Republican-led Senate, I'm not talking about Tennessee Republicans. I'm talking about the Washington Republicans. They've had an opportunity now for 6 years, 5 years since 9/11 to fix it. They've done nothing. Our borders remain broken. Employers still are able to hire without much punishment. And frankly, we've done very little to begin training a border enforcement and border patrol crew. Thanks to my colleague Jim Cooper, who worked with the sheriff here in Davidson County, Darren Hall, working to find a way to give them tools to enforce the laws that the Republican-led Senate and Republican-led Congress and President have not enforced. I applaud Darren Hall. I want to give him more tools and more like him around the country. We ought to guard our borders, severely punish employers who break the law, and ensure that we implement every one of the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission. We should do that in a bipartisan way, because breaking the borders, there's no Democrat or Republican way to do that. That's just breaking the law.
Mr. Corker.
Yes, sir. Great question. I went down to mile 6 on the Mexico-Arizona border. And it was amazing to look out in the desert as far as you could see and see a pathway coming into America and a hole in the fence that anybody in this room could walk through. And we actually had on that day water tanks on our side of the fence in case anyone who might be coming was thirsty. Absolutely, we need border control. We need to do everything we can to make sure that both our northern and southern borders are secure, because people with all kinds of different nationalities are coming into our country, and we have no idea what they wish to do when they get here. We need to also make sure that we allow people to work here, but only if they're legal. So I really do believe that we need to strengthen our border control. I think we need to make sure there's an instant certification for people to know whether they actually are citizens or not, or here legally. I meet with employers all across the state of Tennessee that have tremendous difficulties with document fraud and that kind of thing. And so as a country, we need to do those things to make sure that people actually know whether they're here legally or not. And then for those people who abuse that, certainly they should be punished.
30 seconds, Mr. Ford.
My opponent has been critical of my understanding of the law and bragged about his experience in the private sector. Mr. Corker, I applaud your personal success.
Thank you.
But I have one question for you on the issue of immigration. You're the only candidate for running for the United States Senate anywhere in the country who's ever hired an illegal immigrant before. Your property was raided after 3 visits by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. I know you've criticized my understanding of the law, but my little understanding of the law suggests to me this: if someone works for you and they break the law, you should fire them. Why didn't you fire that subcontractor when you learned that they were breaking the law?
Time's up, Mr. Ford. At this point, question from Vicki.